Welcome to the Honest Health Podcast with your host, Jeffrey Burke. Honest Health brings you the brightest minds in the natural products industry, as well as athletes and entertainers. Jeff will keep you entertained and informed while educating on how to be successful on your healthy journeys. Now, here's your host, Jeffrey Burke.
Hello and welcome back to the Honest Health Podcast. Jeffrey Burke here. I'm your host. I'm so glad you're here. This is that wonderful new platform of mine where you get to hear from the best minds in the natural product industry and some amazing minds outside of the industry as well. I like to make sure that I bring you this great information so that you have the tools to make better, wiser, healthier, and more decisive decisions. And remember, you can follow me on Spotify and listen to the audio, coming to many more platforms very soon, as well as my YouTube channel where you can watch the interaction. I hope you'll take the time to go there as well. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you as well. My guest today is Bill Chioffi, and we are going to talk about mushrooms today. Now, as you know, if you've been following, we've been doing a deep dive in herbs and also a deep dive in mushrooms. Today, we're going to be talking about cordyceps, and I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Hey, Dr. J, what do you say?
Oh, not much. Everything's good. It's warming up out here in the desert. We cooled off a little bit today to like 107, so it's really kind of crispy. So it's really good. But I love the summer. I love the heat.
Yeah. No, you're in the right place at the right time.
Very much. So I've been talking to someone the other day. I was on the road. I got back. I was a week in Florida, then I was in Virginia, and someone brought the point to me, and I thought it was an interesting question. And it's probably a question you've heard many times before. Are all functional mushrooms created equal? And number two, is having a certified organic mushroom that much better in a product that they're using and taking orally for good health?
Great questions. Same questions you should be asking about most of your products, especially herbal products. I'd say to the second point that choosing a certified organic product gives you the knowledge that there is custody in the supply chain that measures purity of the ingredient in terms of contaminants and things that you may not want in your mushroom. They are accumulators of the substances that they grow on and around. And so you do want to be careful to check for pesticides, heavy metals. And that's true of all of the botanicals, which is why, of course, companies like Kokora can control for those things in a quite detailed way through regenerative organic agriculture. So that answers the kind of the second question. And to the first, are they all created equal? No, they're not. Simply. So we can get into more detail, but they are all the same types of organisms, but those also include things that you would refer to as mold or yeast or other organisms that have similar characteristics to their life cycle that fall into the kingdom of fungi. So they're different. And I think the question that comes up for us a lot is the question of which ones are adaptogens? Are they all adaptogens? Do they all help us adapt to stress in the classic ways that folks like Hans Seyle and the forefathers of the adaptogenic principles brought forward of classifying plants as adaptogens? And I always recommend David Winston and Stephen Maim's book on adaptogens. I think it's very well done, and they cover some of the mushrooms. And kind of I would always considered reishi an adaptogen. It certainly has very strong cases for it, but there's some cases in which you may not want to use it for safety concerns that would possibly classify it as not adaptogenic. It's not so much of a safety concern, but for other reasons. There's quite specific applications for Ganoderma. And the one, though, that they do say comes closest to that would be the species we're talking about today, which is Cordyceps militaris. And also, we can't talk about the Cordyceps militaris species without discussing Ophiocordyceps sinensis, which is the caterpillar fungus that is a different type of species that's been much harder to grow, let's say, in any kind of organic fashion other than the mycelia from that, and is quite expensive and comes from a limited region in the Tibetan plateau areas that is quite hard to find and makes the Ophiocordyceps sinensis caterpillars, which is a hardened caterpillar that the organism has parasitized and hardened and consumed, and then forms this little blade of grass-like looking stroma. Winter worm, summer grass is the name as it's translated. If you look up the nomenclature for Ophiocordyceps sinensis, but those caterpillars sell for, thousands of dollars a kilo, let's say.
Okay. Wow.
And so that's not being used in the commercial marketplace to a large degree, although we do have quite a bit of detailed analysis and studies on those. They're only now just figuring out how to actually inoculate the specific species of caterpillar and get it into the correct soil conditions to have any type of monitored growth. So that is being done by some folks that we know. But we choose to grow this other species called Cordyceps militaris, which produces a little stroma. These are species of mushroom that belong to the Ascomycetes, which is a little bit different. Like, are they all created equally? Well, no. This is actually a different spore production. This is the actual, we'd say, mushroom. This is a Cordyceps mushroom. It's actually a stroma. And the Ascomycetes have the spore production encased within the asci here, this sac-like formation. So the spores are inside it, indicating that it would have to either be eaten or the spores would be harder to drop from this unless it dropped to the ground and then decomposed and the spores were able to do their thing. So at any rate, what these Cordyceps militaris stroma, which they're tasty.
They look like they look like Cheetos. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of the characteristics of flavor profiles and things like this, but that one is one of the only species that's not grown on wood matter for us. Like you see the shiitakes growing back there, those grow on wood logs or formed wood logs from sawdust and wood chips. But the Cordyceps militaris, they have found that it grows very well on wheat and rice. And so you can sterilize those two grains, which are in excess amounts and could be grain that couldn't be fed for whatever reason, but could be sterilized and used to grow a mushroom. And so this is grown on rice, ours. But then we're only harvesting the stromas that come up out of the grain substrate. And that's what's used to be ground and then turned into an extract. And it carries the same flavor profiles as the mushroom or the stroma or the Cordyceps fruiting body here. So, and so in the research, they have found various similarities to the Ophiocordyceps sinensis and the militaris, and differences. They can definitely distinguish the two species with chemical analysis, and they have tracked various differences in those chemistries, as I've said, But militaris, again, is easy to grow and harvest and have a repeatable source that's certified organic, and also has this interesting compound called cordycepin, which is unique to Cordyceps militaris in terms of its density in that species. So you wouldn't find cordycepin in any of the other species, which, again, are they all the same? No. There's no cordycepin in lion's mane that we know of. We're still, getting more and more details as we break each of these species down with finer and finer instrumentation. But so the Cordyceps militaris, it's interesting. We started doing some sensory profiling of our mushrooms with some sommeliers from the British Columbia Beverage and Technology Access Center in the Okanagan region. And these sommeliers had some really interesting taste notes, and we're starting to make those publicly available on LinkedIn, because we really feel like you can work with the flavors of mushrooms. One of the biggest complaints is that people don't like the taste of mushrooms, so they don't eat them and they stay away from them. Of the many phobias we have about mushrooms, one is the flavor. Same for herbs, I think, to a certain degree. But so it has this very, very interesting flavor that's it would be tough to duplicate, and it pairs well. And they've even said like it would be interesting to make a gravy or a rich, savory broth. Like it does have that umami flavor, but it's not unpleasant, I don't think. And it is served as a delicacy in soups in China. And it's very interesting, and they can be these dried stroma is usually what they'll put in there, or fresh, actually, because they have access to these things growing right in those regions and quite regional. So you'd only find cordyceps really served like that fresh in regions where they were growing it. So and I love that intersection of mushrooms with food, because they are foods. And really, that's why we have such a great safety profile on all of the functional mushrooms, is because they've been consumed as foods for thousands of years in that form as a mushroom. So I guess in terms of that, it's interesting to see how people use the cordyceps. And it is, again, truly an adaptogen, where you say, how does it work? Well, it helps the organism adapt to stress in non-specific ways, to put it briefly, with a wide range of safety. And so it has a normalizing effect on the physiology. So does it give you energy? Yes, but it may give you energy by helping you rebuild your own energy reserves through this ATP and protein synthase production, which allows greater and quicker recovery. Let's say if you're just starting to exercise, for people who are getting into a health regimen, or if you've been in a long-term health regimen, athletes tend to lean into the effects of cordyceps, because they have higher demands on the reactive stress that happens over and over. And you need a little bit of extra support for that. So these things like cordycepin, right? Like, while they may not be the active chemical, there are things that have been linked to its activity for these, let's say, recovery-related type mechanisms, which ultimately lead to more energy. And so without stimulating the system by giving it nutritive action, which, interestingly, most of the adaptogens have highly nutritive properties, whether they be minerals or phytochemicals or other things that are quite rich and unique to those plants. So and they have been consumed like that as a power food or a superfood. Maca is a really good example of that one, right? So it's packed with nutrients and comes from an area that has really low levels of nutrients in the soil. And so when we look at that whole classification of adaptogens and cordyceps fitting right in there, I think it is interesting to see it's a better way, let's say, to create energy by helping the body be able to recover from stress and to nurture the centers in the nervous system that helps you feel energized during the day and not run down. So,
I have a friend, and he is a professional triathlete. He's been competing for a long time and
mhm.
slowing down a little bit because he's getting to be that age where the body said it's time to slow down. But he's been a big proponent of cordyceps, and his wife runs marathons, and he has always taken cordyceps, and he just says that it just helps everything from his respiratory system to his energy to everything. And she never took it, because she was somehow under the impression that you had to be really an intensive athlete to use it. And a lot of the research out there gears, to the ATP and the professional athletes and respiratory and all that kind of stuff. So she decided to start using it. And she said that it not only made such an amazing difference with the way she thought, the way she felt, her total balance of her body, but her energy level was intensified to levels she's never seen. So she threw the word to me. She said, "Do you think that this is a product that helps with balance and homeostasis in the body?" And I think it does give balance. I don't know if I'd use the word homeostasis, but I guess that's different for everybody because that's a state of balance, like a teeter-totter, if you will, to kind of put things back in balance. But she got a lot out of it. So you go down the laundry list of possible benefits, and she got all of them.
Yeah. No, I mean, we have a lot of positive feedback on cordyceps, and something I use myself regularly. And I even like it in tea. So the tea that I'm drinking right now has a little bit of the cordyceps in it. So, I think it's it's certainly become more popular because of the Last of Us video game, and then the series that's been put out where it's been popularized, the cordyceps as this zombie fungus. And but I mean, I think it's an indication in pop culture that there is that vast awareness now of functional mushrooms, and to see them popping up like that, and to recently see some LA Times articles, both in digital and print, about the mushroom industry is interesting as well. And I think the trend will continue. And as people start to become more aware of this, like you're saying, Jeff, they get pigeonholed for certain uses where like cordyceps isn't necessarily just for the super triathlete. It's certainly helpful, but it can be part of a regimen for anybody that's just looking for a little bit of extra support in that way. And many people do have physically demanding jobs. You don't have to be a triathlete. I know some people who do work, especially around here where I'm living now, with logging and pretty heavy yard work, that like those folks are in shape.
It's a necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly enough, tell everybody where you are. I want to share that.
Oh yeah, I moved to British Columbia from Asheville, and I'm in Roberts Creek. I'm here in the Nammex offices, and we have our sales customer service office, which is downstairs in the old family home. And so it's a beautiful campus. And then right across, there's another set of offices that has our analytical labs and some sterile growing for research. And it's beautiful here. Roberts Creek is on the Sunshine Coast and of BC. So it's a short ferry ride from West Vancouver. And so getting used to ferry life, everything you need is here. There's all services you need. But I do like the slower pace of life, and I like the fact that I can walk to work, and I can walk from my house to here, and plenty of opportunities for everything I love to do.
It's fantastic.
Mountain bike, hike, fish, look for herbs and mushrooms, and getting into all the different plants that like we don't have. And even one of the most biodiverse regions really in the world that I came from in Appalachia, in the mountains of Western North Carolina, to here, but this also very diverse here, and like some things that grow quite well here that won't grow back home. And so, yeah, I love it, and getting used to it here. And I'm here on a work permit, and so yeah, we'll see from there. I have been working as a consultant and living there and coming out here for visits. My wife's dad has a place on Vancouver Island, and he's from Toronto, so we've always had a little Canadian connection. So
I love it.
But yeah, so yeah, thanks for asking. It does put a little bit of perspective on it. It's not about cordyceps, but
It's
yeah.
we're doing enough of these that I want them to really just get to know you as well, because I've loved getting to know you, and I think our personalities and our everything about us, our auras, bring a lot to what we do, and
Yeah,
I think it's
thank you,
important.
Jeff.
No, it's
Yeah,
my
I feel
pleasure.
the same way. Yeah, and I think it's important. I've worked with Nammex as a client on the other side, buying products from them, and watching those products be analyzed and scrutinized for purity, identity, and strength, and watching them pass muster over and over, and now being on the other side and helping to develop these further methodologies that can help raise the bar in the industry for analytical standards with mushrooms, adding things like cordycepin to our specifications instead of just having beta glucans, which are present in a smaller amount, I would say, in cordyceps than in other species. But that's, I think that's one of the reasons I felt very confident in making a decision to move here, just because I've seen the company operating at such a high level for so many years, and sticking to its values and mission, and not swaying from those core values and mission, vision, and values that the founder, that Jeff Chilton, expects for the company. So yeah, love it. Love being here.
Talk a little bit about because the growth cycle of cordyceps. Once I know it's wonderfully grown and taken care of wonderfully, when it starts, what is the time from beginning growth to harvest?
So it's about 50 to 75 days. It
Okay.
really it can be that long. We have a really good article on our website at Nammex about detailing the last trip that we took to our cordyceps facility that produces these for extraction. But yeah, it's a very interesting process. It starts, and they look like actually just this standard like Tupperware tubs that you would put a casserole in or something. But they're they're fit to the machinery to go through on conveyors to be filled with rice and a little bit of water. And then they're sterilized in like a giant autoclave, trays and trays of them. And then after that process, they go through another sterile area where a needle will inoculate that sterilized culture, which is could be wheat or rice, and in our case, rice. So needle drops in and inoculates in the sterile culture, the mycelium from Cordyceps militaris. And then that is allowed to colonize the entire substrate. And so by observation, when it looks like there's a coating of like whitish or yellow whitish type film starting to form, then it will be transferred into a fruiting room where the growth can continue. And with cordyceps, it's exposed to a couple of different wavelengths of light, which are proprietary, but it's one of the growth and control factors when you're growing on a substrate that you can manipulate in order to get the correct fruiting conditions for this, and
Oh, that's interesting.
and then also get the right types of concentrations of that cordycepin as well that you're looking for. There are other things in the process with light in mushrooms, like the production of vitamin D2 in the conversion of ergosterol to ergocalciferol. If you expose shiitakes, for instance, when you bring them home from the store, just put them upside down and expose them to sunlight, and the vitamin D levels will go up in your shiitake mushrooms, even the ones that you've harvested already and are just sitting there. So
I did not know that. Thank you.
yeah, so that's kind of another thing that happens in the production of some of the extracts, where it might not be necessarily like a solvent or something, but it could be, even in this case, light reactions, because the mushrooms react similarly as our skin does in that type of conversion to create D2. So in that way, more like humans than like plants in their different metabolite production as they are exposed to sunlight. So yeah, I went down a rabbit hole. Where were we going?
We're going together, so it's okay. I did want to I did want to go back.
I never do that. I never go down a rabbit hole.
Please, I have a residency there.
Yeah.
So the rice is actually repurposed.
Oh yeah.
It's repurposed, right?
Production process. Yeah. So then once that process is allowed to happen for, like, again, anywhere between 50 and 75 days, then when they're grown out and you've got a whole bunch of them starting to sprout up off of that tub, they're ready for harvest. And then they just basically have sterile gloves on and they just scrape them off the substrate. And that rice substrate, actually what they do with that is it's fed to the livestock, to pigs, because it's a sterile product, and it's a little bit, has a little bit of moisture in it when it's fresh like that. But typically if it was a wood substrate, they can regrow more mushrooms on it. You can re-sterilize it and grow more on a log that's already produced a bunch of mushrooms. But normally those are composted, and they're really good organic compost matter to go back into the soil to help rebuild soils. And so, yeah, after that happens, then the fresh mushrooms are all laid out on flat trays with mesh, and they go into forced hot air drying for about 15 hours or so. It's similar to forced hot air drying that's used in the herbal world. In fact, the dryers are probably the same types of dryers that get manufactured to dry ginseng in China and other berries and roots and things. And that's the other thing too, is that you have to remember is that the infrastructure there to do this type of stuff has been in place for a very long time be able to do it at scale. So I think that's kind of what really impressed me the most was the efficiency that this mushroom grow had. And this is in Inner Mongolia, in part of China, where they had a lot of support from the government and had created a few different proprietary processes and patents within China based on the development that they've been able to do from the grow to the extraction, and then standardization of various types of extracts. So they know that this type of mushroom growing has a much higher value add than the food growing. And so you can only gain a certain amount for white button mushrooms or shemije or shiitakes. And so the specialty mushrooms like Cordyceps, lion's mane, reishi, those all bring extra income to the farmers. And that's a great incentive for anybody. And they have quite a good life. And yeah, it was probably one of the most interesting types of growing and processing operations that I've seen, and I've seen a lot across the globe. So
how do people get a hold of you, or how do they reach out to Nammex? How do they learn more? Obviously, we're doing a deep dive, so we have a series people can go to. But how do they research Nammex and research you?
I'd say go to the website, nammex.com, Nammex.com, North American Medicinal Mushroom Extracts, Nammex. And so we have a LinkedIn page. We have a YouTube channel. I got a lot of great videos on YouTube, and we are just wrapping up our plans for a trip to China. It looks like it'll be end of November, maybe first week of December. And so, we visit different, they all, and again, are all these mushrooms the same? No, they all have different harvest times and cycles. And the cordyceps can be produced continuously. That's in a facility that is enclosed. It's indoors. It's kind of unique in that way, in the same unique way that it's not grown on wood. All of the other species are, if you went to the farms, you'd see open, sort of like shade covered, like the cold frames, really, if you've seen them even down on the farm in Costa Rica or any place. And they're open to the elements, and they're using the nature to control the growth cycles. So it's very much dependent on what's happening with the temperature and moisture conditions for those fruitings to happen. Temperature mostly, and that's becoming more and more difficult to predict.
The world is changing in many, many different ways. Leave us with a thought for the day. Anything you want to share with anybody?
Just be kind and be curious. Keep asking questions. And I guess that's my thought for the day. It's always beneficial to be kind. There's a lot of things going on, and we don't know what's going on with each of the individuals that we interact with every day. And so that's always a good practice. But I think that curiosity too, that's what's driven me to ask more questions, like, how are these things made? How does it get from a seed into this bottle that's on the shelf in Whole Foods or someplace? I'm
the same way too. I thank you so much for this. I hope you guys enjoyed this today. I've been speaking with Bill Chioffi with Nammex. Remember to go to Nammex.com for great information. Of course, this is our episode 3 of our deep series. Remember to go to my webpage, drjeffreyburke.com. You can tap on the Honest Health logo and go to Spotify and listen to the audio. I recommend going to the YouTube. Make sure to subscribe and like and all that stuff, and leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and really enjoy these episodes, because I'm bringing you the best of the best of the best, because I want you to have every tool in your hand to make the really wise, healthy, and decisive decisions. Bill, thank you for being here today. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
You too. Be well, everybody. Take care. Be kind, and God bless.
Stay tuned for more information from the Honest Health Podcast with Jeffrey Burke. And make sure to check back often for interviews and conversations from the guests we all want to hear from. I'm John the Announcer. Thanks for listening.